Hi, welcome to another tutorial series. This video is about creating your own database. So we have a scenario on our screen and we have been given the task of being a new desk officer for the computer science department and we want to speed up our work process. So rather than using the file system method, we decided to create a database that has the following tables in it. Okay, we had the registration number, the names, the gender, the email, and the current year of study. Now, our tasks have been given to us, which is to fill in the database with up to three records. What database server will you use? How will you enter these values? And what data type will each column hold? So now we're going to answer those questions and get to a solution to this problem. Answering this question will require you to work on a relational database model, just like PostgreSQL, Microsoft Server SQL, and Microsoft SQL also. We have a variety of them, like I have already explained before. So we need to work with that. But there are cases where we cannot work with that. It's not a practical work. We need to answer this question theoretically. I hope you get me. So, like you're in an exam, you need to answer it theoretically. This is how you would answer it. So, for people that do not know, on my screen, which I will have it up in a bit, is how a regular Microsoft SQL server looks like. So when we create our data type, this is how we're going to input all values. This is a basic view of how SQL actually works. So we're going to create something similar to this, but we're not going to be creating it on the SQL server. We're going to be creating it as a Word document because we are doing the theoretical part of this training. All right. So the next thing is for us to start answering our questions, right? So we're being told to find the data type for each column and what they will hold. And our first data type here is the first column is the registration number. And the registration number now we're not exactly sure of what it's supposed to hold. Is it holding letters and numbers or is it holding just numbers alone? If it's holding just numbers alone, we can use the integer short for int. But if it's holding a mixture of the two, it will be best for us to use the varchar. But in this scenario, we're going to be using an integer because we're dealing with whole numbers. So I'm going to input int at the side and the next line. Then we have names, and depending on the name of a person, the name is a combination of different characters, right? So we have James, it's a combination of James, but we cannot write char as the data type. We're going to put in varchar. Varchar allows us to have a huge number of cases or a huge way of saving and storing those names so that no matter how long your name is, we can have those inside the system. So we're going to use varchar, and when using varchar, you give varchar a required number that it's supposed to use. So if you say varchar 50, anything you type in that box or in that column, if it passes 50 characters, it's not going to be recorded. Okay. So for a name, a typical name, we should give it like 100, right? So we're going with that. Then we have the gender, and the gender is the same thing, so we can easily just write out gender and then give it a varchar. Since we're not really going to be using much of that, and we can make this 10 if we want, because female and male is not really a huge demarcation. Then we have the email. The email is also a combination of all this, so a good rule would be to still use the varchar for it, as that would help us quite a lot. And we do not know the length of an email, so we're going to estimate 50 at most. So we're going to go in with 50. Good. Now, there's another thing you need to note. A lot of people will be asking questions like, well, why are we always using voucher? Voucher just makes your work better. You can still edit after this and you will not have an issue. But when you use other data types, there is always an issue, okay? Then when we're dealing with numbers, we use integers. That's normal. Integers, floats, decimal. So we have our last part here, the current year of study. So we have a year, and I'm going to put year in a small integer based on our studies before. Small ints is written together. So based on our studies before, we realize that small ints are for numbers that are from 0 to say 9 million or 9,000 or whatever figure you can think about, but the number shouldn't be big, right? So that's that. And for this, we have already gotten our data for every data type for each column. Now, how do we format this data type and make it more presentable? First of all, we need to realize that we should have created a table and a database before this. So we have create database, and that's we're going to call our database student rec. Okay, student rec. Good. And when we created a database called student rec, in this student rec, we're going to have a table that's going to have this different things we have listed out. So the registration number, the names, the gender, all that is going to be in a table. So we're going to come in with create a table, and we're going to call our table students. Okay. And now we've gotten that. So when you create a table, you're going to now let the system know what you want inside that table. So we're going to open semicolon. That's a semicolon, sorry. We're going to open a parenthesis and put in these figures inside of it. And then we're going to close our parenthesis and terminate it. And there's that. So we have answered question 4 and question 3. We've created our database. We have given it the various data types. Now in our table, we need to find a primary key, something that we can use to recognize other details, or we can use as a foreign key later on. And I think our registration number is the perfect primary key. So I'm going to make that the primary key, and that's fine. Now, the next part is to fill in the database with up to three records. So insert, we're going to insert a table, and that's just what we're going to do. Insert a table and then create a lot of things inside of it just to replicate this. So we have 5 rows. That's 5 rows times 3 records, which is wrong. Should have created 4 rows so that we can have a row for the names and definitions of each part. So we're going to have in the first one registration number. In the second one, we're going to have names. The next one, we're going to have the gender. And the next one, we're going to have the email. And the next, we're going to have the year. Now it's time for us to fill in all that data and get more information. So for starters, our registration number, since we decided that it's going to be an integer and it is our primary key, we're going to go in with an integer. We cannot put in CSC. We cannot put in letters into it. So we're going to go in with 101. We're going to go with James Snow. The gender is male. The email is jamie at gmail.com. The year 2024. Then we're going to come on to the second person, 2024. Her name should probably be Emily. Her name should be 102. The name should probably be Emily White. She's a female. Her email is going to be emmy@gmail.com. And that's that. So I've filled in records, although we did not fill in for three people, we filled in for two persons. And but I believe that's enough to show how you're supposed to do this in a scenario like this. The next thing for us is to answer the last question. What relational database did you use for this? So in this tutorial, we use the Microsoft SQL server to carry out this whole question and answer session we just had. And there's that. So we have literally all the answers to everything we want. And just to check once again, we realize that we have answered all the questions we've been asked. And we've done everything we're supposed to do. And that's how you create your own database. So what we have written out here from the create database student record. Student record stands for the name of our database, and when you want to create a database, you give it the instruction create database. When you want to create a table, you say create table. Then we have this. So if you want to also insert into that table, we can go in with the insert into. Okay, but I don't want to boggle your mind with all of that, but that's the right way if we are going to be typing it directly into a relational database model. And that's it. That's all I have for you in this class. In another session, I'll go into more details and we'll probably work with the relational database itself. But until then, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.